My name is Brian Pillman Jr., and you are listening to In Your Head with Shannon Standiford.
In the quiet of the night where dreams take flight, voices whisper softly, shining like the stars so bright. Every heart has a story, don't you ever forget. Let's open our minds, share the journey, no regret. Here we gather, a circle of hope, sharing laughter and tears, we learn just how to cope. Every tale we tell, it helps to heal our souls. In the space of understanding, together we become whole. So let the words flow, let the music rise. In your head with Shannon, the stories come alive. Every heartbeat echoes where our spirits thrive. From fears to triumphs, we'll paint the skies anew. In this podcast journey, I'm here with you.
Ladies and gentlemen, boys and girls, children of all ages, welcome again to In Your Head with Shannon Standiford. I am your host, Shannon Standiford, and with me today is Hannah Neese from the Detroit, Michigan area. She is an elephant-loving woman who works in every book nerd's dream of working in a bookstore, obviously. But more importantly, she's the current Jello Wrestling World Heavyweight Champion, and she's also my adopted sister-in-law.
It's true.
Welcome, Hannah.
Hi, glad to be here. Thanks for having me.
Hey, no, thanks for coming on. So, first and foremost, how's the family?
They're good. They're good. Kids started school. Our oldest started kindergarten. Our youngest started daycare, and that happened this week. But they seem to be enjoying it so far. So,
How's the mom handling that?
you know, I definitely I had some tears on the first day. Neither of them have had tears at drop off so far, but I've definitely been emotional. But yeah, we're good, and Eric's good. He's in the thick of a new season of shows up at the school that he teaches at, so he's just doing a lot of building, getting ready for the first show of the season, which opens later this month.
Oh, fun.
Yeah.
All right, so let's dive right into it. How was Hannah's childhood?
Huh. I mean, I think good overall. I definitely there was some, can I swear, some shit to it?
Go for it.
Great.
Yeah.
Perfect. Yeah, I mean there was definitely some shit. Like my dad's not the greatest guy. And both of my parents, they had me kind of young. I don't know that they were really super ready for it, and so just sort of a byproduct of them having their own shit to deal with, and then really a lot of it my dad not being a great guy is where most of the shit comes from, but still overall, like, I had a good support system. My mom was awesome. She raised me mostly by herself with the help of like her parents and her sister and brother, and so still like no true complaints, but there's stuff.
Okay, so when as you're growing up and your dad's kind of,
Yeah.
your mom's doing the best that she can. What's going through your mind? Like, do you recognize any of that stuff at all, or was it kind of hidden from you until you're older?
Yeah, no, I mean, I knew pretty well the entire time what was going on. My earliest real memory is like of my, dad kind of beating up on my mom and them fighting, and like the day that she kind of finally threw him out of the house was that day. And so like I sort of only have the foundation of knowing like what that contentious relationship was, and kind of that what kind of person he really was, and that it was good for them to split up and everything. And I didn't quite know like a lot of, the finer details of some of the stuff until I was much older, because my mom, did her best to not like, put me in grown folks' business when it came to that, and to not talk shit on my dad, because she was like, I didn't want to influence how you felt about it. I wanted you to be able to form your own opinion and have your own relationship. But like I still, knew about that and knew obviously like when he would say he was gonna come pick me up and not like, I was like, I'm seeing what's happening. I'm getting the full picture.
Okay, so as you're growing up, um, what's life like for you at that point?
Um, it honestly was pretty good, like, because kind of my parents split up so early after that, it was relatively peaceful, for having such a sort of kind of rocky start, and still like, periods of sort of unrest, but overall it was much more peaceful after that. And I remember just like, I don't know, a lot of my childhood just feels like I would kind of my world centered around like I would go to school. After school, I would go and hang out at my grandma and grandpa's house for a little bit. My mom would pick me up after work and like we would go home and just like it's just like sort of a series of like, really kind of nice peaceful days of like predictable good kid routine. So that's the part that I'm like, I can't complain too much. Like there was definitely a long period after kind of they split up, where when it was like mostly just me with my mom and my dad was kind of doing his own thing and wasn't seeing me as much. Like it was very kind of chill and peaceful. And so that's what a lot of what I associate my childhood with. It's like, all of that family.
Do you have any kind of resentment or anything towards your dad?
I mean, I think for sure. I think there's no way to sort of not. I think there's still a lot of anger there. Like, we don't speak anymore. We haven't spoken in close to 10 years. We had a big falling out about 10 years ago, not long after Eric and I got engaged. Where just a bunch of like things that had been building up in the family kind of came to a head. And when I finally stood up to him, it's not something he likes, women speaking back to him, talking back to him. And so he kind of blew up at me and it got really intense and bad. And then we haven't spoken since then. So, I mean, I'm sure, I mean, I feel like there's no way that there's not, resentment and things still there. But mostly what I feel when I think about him is just kind of sad that, you know, especially now that I have kids and like that I don't know, couldn't try to get it together for your kids, that you can't put your own shit aside to like make up with your kid. And he hasn't spoken to me in almost a decade. He doesn't know his grandkids. My other sisters don't really want anything to do with him either. And then so mostly I'm just like, I feel bad for you, man, that you like can't figure it out. You're so unwilling to humble yourself and admit that you might have been wrong at any point in your life and to make changes that you need to make, that like you're going to end up just this lonely old man whose kids don't see him, who has no family around him, and it like doesn't need to be like that, you know? So I'm just
Yeah.
like, I wish you would get it together.
So, is that something in the sense that since he just couldn't get himself together, couldn't even admit like if he was like wrong or anything like that, have you kind of taken that as like, okay, I don't want to be like that into your life and into your kids' life?
Yeah, for sure, for sure. It's definitely been a journey, through growing up. Like I realized, really early on that I didn't want to be anything like him, but I am a lot like him. Like I see a lot of the same tendencies and the same way of interacting in the world in myself as I see in him. And I think some of it is like his mom was pretty abusive to him and he grew up in sort of, with not a great environment, which he then, mirrored and passed on to me. So like some of it, I definitely see where like I get so angry or it's so hard to admit that I'm wrong and I so just like, you know, apologizing used to make me want to like crawl out of my skin. I hated it so bad, but I actively would make myself practice saying out loud I'm sorry and like giving proper apologies and doing those things that like my dad never did and was never capable of doing, and never sitting with how uncomfortable it is to be wrong or to admit that you made a mistake or you were the asshole in this situation. Like nobody likes that, but like I made myself practice getting comfortable with that discomfort because I was so determined that I was not going to be like him, that I was like, even though this is so incredibly hard, I'm gonna make myself do it because it just like he's never apologized to anyone in his life, and never been able to admit that he's wrong. It's always, so you made me do this. If you hadn't done this, then I wouldn't have had to do what I did. It's your fault. You made me do it. You brought it on yourself. And so I've definitely incorporated that into like my life moving forward, and definitely with my kids, where I like make sure that I apologize to them if I, lose my cool, or, they come to me. Like my daughter now, she's getting old enough to kind of communicate when things feel unfair to her, and we can have like an actual talk, and I'll be like, I'm sorry if I messed up, if I did something that, hurt you.
Yeah, I mean, I get that. It is a very humbling thing to try to move past uh, the behaviors of the parental units that have kind of just showed us the wrong way of doing things, um,
Hmm.
especially whenever it comes to apologizing. My mom was always very big on, if you do something wrong, you apologize.
Hmm.
The opposite for a little while with my own father, but
Hmm.
once you learn, hey, I was kind of an asshole here. Uh,
Yeah.
in retrospect, I should probably apologize. It moves things on a little further. So, so let's say, so you're growing up, everything's kind of going good. What's teenage Hannah like? What goes on in her life?
Teenage me, very nerdy. I was super like mostly hung out, I did theater, so I was hanging out with a lot of the theater and band crowd. Like I had kind of a select small group of friends within, that sort of crowd that I would hang out with. Um, but high school, yeah, teenage years were for the most part all right. Senior year got a little bit sort of dicey. My mom halfway through my senior year, it sort of came out that the reason that for the past several years she'd been sort of like all of a sudden we weren't having a lot of money, and she was like missing a lot of events and staying home and kind of isolating herself and missing a lot of work and stuff like that. She ended up having to go to rehab. She had an opioid addiction that got on top of her. And so like halfway through my senior year was sort of trying to deal with that, as well as like figuring out like, oh, I have to apply to colleges and like, get this next phase figured out while I'm still like sort of trying to take care of my mom and get that squared away, and deal with, being a kid who's like, mom went to rehab, right? Like that's sort of a thing to process. And so it was like, another one of those things where it was like, oh, it was so good for a while. And then we sort of hit another period where it was like, oh shit, here we go again. Um, and so, we she did eventually, she was able to go to rehab and get clean, and she's been clean for a decade and stuff. But that definitely kind of colors always the end of my like high school experiences, sort of the memories of that, and like doing all of my senior stuff while like moving in with my aunt and her two kids and stuff. Kind of that balance of like the highs and lows, and that's life, man.
Did that, did any of that give you like a tremendous amount of anxiety?
Yeah, for sure. I mean, I lost like a ton of weight my senior year. I remember like weirdly getting so many compliments, of course, and like how skinny I was. And I was like, thanks, everything's going really bad and I'm not eating super well because like I'm so stressed out. So that yeah, I definitely felt a lot of stress, a lot of anxiety, a lot of like just like what the fuck, man? What do I even do with this and how do I take care of what needs to be taken care of and what even am I supposed to be taking care of, right? Do I take care of my mom? Do I take care of myself? Like what, yeah.
So how did you handle that? I mean, how did all that anxiety and the whole situation around you? I mean, obviously you said that you lost a lot of weight because of, not eating the proper way. Uh, like mentally, how'd you handle all
Um, a lot of it was thankfully like I said, I moved in with my aunt, and so she was really good about like sitting down and talking with me and like sort of facilitating making sure that I got some professional counseling as well and could like have, outlets to talk about it and to kind of help deal with it. And she was also very good about being a strong voice for reminding me that like I was still young, right? I mean, I was, about to turn 18 and things like that. And she's like, but you're still, you're the child and you've been carrying a lot. And like, it's okay to take the end of, especially this, your senior year of high school and to like just take care of yourself and process this huge thing that's going on, this like significant, enormous thing that you as a kid need to process that you've been carrying. And so that helped a lot, like kind of having her really step into that caretaker role and really push that boundary of like, you are a kid and you're allowed to be a kid and you are allowed to take this time and worry about yourself because that's what you should be doing. It's not your job to fix what's going on in the grown-up world. And that kind of did a lot to alleviate a lot of the stress of not feeling like I had to carry this alone anymore and like be the one taking care of my parent, which is a lot for a kid.
Did you feel guilty at all for doing that though? I mean, whenever you're like, okay, well, I can look after me, I should look after me, I'm going to look after me, but did any of that make you feel guilty?
Oh yeah, totally. Like, yeah, I've constantly felt guilty for that and for letting myself feel, how I felt and feeling like some anger, feeling grief, like any, all of that. Like I felt so bad. I felt like I should be able to just sort of, tamp it down and like keep going forward and that I shouldn't need to focus on me and worry about me like that. I'm like I'm very inclined to be like I'll be fine. I don't, don't worry about me. It's nobody's business what I'm feeling or what's going on with me, least of all mine. Like just let's take care of others. And so I definitely felt a lot of guilt about that, and still that's still kind of something that I continue to work on and struggle with is like not feeling bad when I set a boundary or do something that I know I need to do for myself that either does or might cause other people, discomfort or they might not like it or, things like that.
Okay. So you get past your senior year. You went to college, right?
I did.
Okay. So you go to college after everything that you went through growing up, especially your senior year, you get your first year of college. What does Hannah do?
First year of college was, I mean, a lot of partying. I have to be honest. It's a lot of partying, a lot of just enjoying kind of the freedom, but like that contained, safe freedom of the college experience and feeling sort of invincible, feeling untethered kind of for the first time, right? That I was like, okay, my mom is sober. I don't like, was living on campus at this time. Like, I don't live there anymore. I don't have to worry about anything but myself. I'm like going to class and, doing all the work and going to all the parties. And so I definitely like the first year of college was just a lot of really enjoying that and enjoying getting to study theater at a high level because I had not really, we had a pretty small program in high school. Nobody funds the arts in high school, right? Like they barely fund it
No.
anywhere else. And so like just soaking all of that up, it was like my freshman year of college. I was like, this is the height of everything. I was so stoked to be on campus right in the heart of Detroit. So in the beautiful city, surrounded by all of the architecture and art and music and all of that. Like it was incredible. Um, yeah, college was good.
So obviously, like the parties must have been great.
Yeah, I mean the theater kids did throw some pretty epic parties, I have to say. We were known for our parties. We had the best
You know,
apartment buildings. We threw the best parties.
I have heard the theater people are pretty good whenever it comes to parties.
Yeah, right. We're used to staying up late, right? We do shows at night. Like we get off work at 11 p.m. We're ready to go.
So, all right. So, speaking of theater, so I'm assuming were you an actress, or okay.
Yeah, yeah.
So now I've always heard, and most people that do any kind of performance, that I've always heard that taking your the pain and anger and all that stuff that you had growing up or whatever was around you and you channeled it into your acting was kind of a therapy. Did
Mhm.
you do that?
Yeah, to some degree, it definitely there were a ton of exercises and things like where I would use sort of those experiences or at least that feeling, tap into that feeling and be able to release it for some of the scenes and the things that I did, which was really could be very cathartic. But it was something I was super learned to be super careful about. I had a wise acting teacher who made sure to teach us the difference. She always wanted to hammer home that you don't want to use it as therapy to the point where you're actually putting yourself through something in front of people where you're really processing your real experience. You're really putting yourself through that over and over again. One, because it's just not safe for you as a person to, you shouldn't be making yourself actually be in pain in front of an audience over and over again. And also it honestly, she said, makes you kind of a piss poor actor because you're not acting, you're remembering, you're feeling your own feelings, and eventually that thing isn't going to make you feel as strongly anymore, and you're still not going to know how to act. And you'll have just put yourself through that over and over again and done a ton of psychological damage for no reason. So it was very, I appreciated her for kind of being a really good catalyst for learning how to release emotion and how to bring it up in a way that was truthful and productive and still cathartic, but was not just me sitting there thinking about like, my dad beating my mom over and over again and like sort of gutting myself in front of people and really putting myself through my actual experience as much as remembering that fear or what it feels like when you see someone you love in danger and you can still tap into it without taking yourself all the way there.
Have you come very close to the edge before?
Yeah, most definitely. Most definitely. I have come very close to the edge and there I've like accidentally sort of taken myself into a bad place and had to work really quickly during a show to get myself out of it. I was doing a production of Macbeth, and this was when Eric and I were trying to conceive. We'd been kind of struggling to conceive. It wasn't happening as quickly as like anybody had hoped. Um, he's letting the cat out. I was like, is he coming in to say hi? um, but yeah, so I was getting ready to do, I was playing Lady M and getting ready to do a scene, and I was getting myself into the mindset where she's really tortured about everything that, you know, she's failed on for her husband and things like that before the hand washing scene. And I accidentally brought up the thought of, and you can't give him a baby as I was trying to get into character. And that I was like, oh, that's a real thing for me. Okay, now I have to start over because I cannot do this scene with me being in my feelings about how like my infertility struggles, and that being where this emotion comes from. Like, I am gonna lose it in a way that's not gonna be, even if it looks good to the audience, that's not gonna be good for me. So I like had to shake myself out of it and be like, okay, we're not doing that. We're gonna go down a different path because yeah, bumping into that, I was like, oh yeah, that's bringing up big emotion that I could use, but oh boy.
Ooh, yeah, yeah. That'll do it.
Right?
So with the acting, there that's where you met her, right? You know, in school.
Yeah. Yeah, so it
So
was, sorry.
go ahead.
But yeah, it was just it was towards the end of my senior year we met when he was doing a murder mystery dinner.
Ah, yes, I remember hearing about it. But okay, so speaking of dating, so we'll get to Eric in a minute
Okay.
because I do love that story and I want everybody else to hear that story.
Okay.
But what was dating like for you with everything that was going on?
Um, I mean, I didn't really date a ton. I sort of had like people that I would, you know, in high school, I sort of intentionally didn't date a ton because I was like, well, intentionally slash, right? I wasn't that cool. So like, who was gonna date me anyway? I don't know. But right. But we'll say it was intentional. I wasn't dating because I wanted to enjoy my youth, whatever. And so even in college, like my freshman year, there was someone that I was a friend of mine that I was really, really in love with. And things didn't work out like at towards the end of my freshman year. It just didn't work out, and like they completely cut me off. And I was heartbroken. And so most of my time after that, I really wasn't dating. I was just sort of more interested in going to parties and finding hookups and then being like, no, thank you to feelings. And then pretty much up until I met Eric, there was like a guy before Eric that I had dated very briefly who was very kind, very lovely, like a truly wonderful guy, and actually a lot like Eric in a lot of ways. So there was sort of no reason for there to not be, you know, for it to not work, but it wasn't quite the right fit. There wasn't quite that spark. But other than that, I really did not date a whole lot. I was sort of sowing my wild oats for a little bit and
Yeah, yeah,
avoiding romance.
yeah. We've all been there. It's what
Yeah.
I like to refer to as the hoe phase.
Yes, exactly, exactly.
Yes. So I do have to ask though, like, even though you didn't date a lot, did you have any like anxiety or fear after like watching your dad like hit your mom? Did you have like any of that kind of like like seep into your brain whenever you get into like a relationship or even close to a relationship?
Yeah, for sure. And I would say sort of the way it manifested for me between like my parents and then my dad was still abusive to my stepmom as well. And then my aunt had an abusive husband as well. So I was sort of like really sensitive to the red flags to the point where I am like have almost a zero bullshit policy where if anything even sort of put me on edge or sort of made me feel like I don't know where this is going to go, or I've seen this pattern before, I've seen how this changes from this to that, that I would just like cut bait and get out of there and be like, I don't, lose my number. I'm not giving you the benefit of the doubt because I was so acutely aware of how common it is and how quickly it can shift from someone who would never to yeah they do. And I've seen my mom and aunt both struggle with what that does to your self-esteem and how difficult it can be to get yourself out of a situation like that when you're in it and when you're being broken down like that. That I was just so always afraid of ending up in that situation that I was very like that probably I would say definitely factored into why I didn't date a ton, is because I was just like I'm the pickiest bitch because I was always like, I don't I don't like that thing and it seems like you might and I'd rather not risk it. I'd rather just be alone. And so that's what I always tell Eric. I'm like, see, the nice thing is though, now because I'm such a picky bitch. That means you had zero red flags because I kept dating you. I married you. Like, because I was looking for a man.
Oh, oh, Eric. Oh, Eric. All right. So, speaking of, and I honestly love these stories of, you know, finding, a couple, and because Eric in a previous episode uh, on the show told a story that it's been so long ago that it's time to hear your side of
Okay. All right. The story of how we met. Yeah. Um, so yeah, I was in college and my mom and her boyfriend had wanted to like get a group together and go to a murder mystery dinner and she was like, "You're an actor, you have to go, you're gonna love it." I was like, "All right, mom, I'll go with you." And I was actually supposed to bring a date to this event. There was a guy that, I was friends with in college and we'd sort of been dancing around it for a while and flirting. And so I was like, sure, I'll, bring him to this thing and we'll see what happens. And he texted me and canceled like as we were on our way basically to the thing that he was like, "Oh, I'm at a party and I got day drunk and I can't drive, so I can't meet you." And I was like, okay.
it. Somewhat
um,
responsible.
yeah, right. I was like, I mean, I'm glad that you're not gonna try and drive. I think that's the right call for sure. Um, but yeah, so didn't end up bringing a date. Which was very fortuitous because then, as was the fact that we arrived sort of late, and therefore, in order to get a table all together, we had to go up and talk to the person who was manning the little check-in kiosk, who happened to be Eric. And so we kind of got on his radar right away, and he helped seat us. And then, as we're doing this murder mystery dinner, it's me, my friend who showed up last minute to fill in that ticket, and then my mom, her boyfriend, and two sets of aunts and uncle. For the record, like it's mostly family at this table. And throughout the night, Eric keeps coming over as he's doing the show, and he comes over to the table. And after a few interactions, I like sort of start to notice that he's really only kind of talking to me when he comes over to the table. He's like, only interacting with me. And it got to a point where one of my uncles was like, "Dude, he doesn't even know anybody else is at this table. Like, he is literally only talking to you. The rest of us will say things and he answers to you." Like, and I was like, "Well, okay, I don't know." And, I thought he was super hot. Like, he, finished this whole thing. And I was like, "Oh, he's, I am really feeling him. I don't know. I don't know if I should do it." And my family is like hyping me up. They're like, "You just give him your number. Like, what's the worst that can happen? You know what I mean? Then he doesn't call, whatever. Like, he's super into you. Like, you think he's hot. Leave him your number." And so as I'm waffling, 'cause being very nervous, I was like, I don't know if I should do it. One of my uncles goes up to him to, shake his hand and tell him he did a good job in the murder mystery performance, and then just doesn't let go of his hand, is like keep shaking his hand for an awkwardly long amount of time, like won't let him go. And I look up and I see this and I realize what my uncle's doing to keep him here so that I can give him my number. And I'm like, well, now I have to do it because now my big, burly, full sleeve tattooed uncle is like holding this man hostage in an uncomfortably long handshake that Eric is too nice to break. And so I rush over there and interrupt and, give him a compliment on his work for the night and hand him the slip of paper and go, here's my phone number. Just, you know, and then couldn't think of anything else to say and just turned around and like chugged the rest of my glass of water and was like, we gotta go. We gotta get out of here. I just made an ass of myself. He's not gonna call. We gotta go. And then he did in fact call a couple of days later, and we met up
Did
for a date.
did he wait the 3 days? Because there's the rule. You got to wait 3 days.
He waited 2 days. He said he tried to wait the 3 days, but he was too excited, and so he hoped that 2 days was still respectable. That he called. And I did not answer when he called because it was a Missouri area code. And I was like, I don't know anybody from Missouri. I was like, it's probably spam. So I sent him to voicemail the first time he called me.
As you should. As you should.
Yeah.
Okay. Alright, so you meet 2 days later. My boy Eric gives you a call, and you guys start dating. Does any of of your past popping up, like anxiety, like what those first couple weeks with him?
Yeah, for sure. It was very very sort of strange to me how like good and easy it was, and like what a, great person he was, great partner he was. And so it was a lot of sort of underlying anxiety, like waiting for the other shoe to drop, right? Of what's the catch, or like how, either how is he gonna not be what I think he is, or how is it gonna, just suddenly get taken away where he's gonna lose interest, or I'm gonna mess something up or whatever. Like very much a period of being like, this is like good though. That doesn't happen. Like what's, but yeah, he continued to be great. And obviously, like, over the years, we have arguments and disagreements and things like that, but never, yeah, at any point has my fear of like being not only being left, but of being like seen and not wanted once, I've exposed all of these parts of myself. Like he's only ever greeted every part with sort of tenderness and willingness to like love every part of me, which has been so like weird, amazing, but like weird. Man, what?
Yeah, I definitely understand that. So I do have to ask though, was it super hard for you from going through like fuck feelings? I don't want to have anything to do with that. Was that like really like on like a deep level, like inside at night when it was just you? How hard was that for you to get? How do I fucking feel? I got
Yeah.
this amazing guy, but how the fuck do I? Yeah, how do I deal with this?
Yeah, totally. Like very much fear of the intensity of it. Like I struggled with telling him that I loved him for the first time because I was just like to make myself say it, to like expose sort of the soft underbelly, and to, hand your heart to someone and be like, hey, I love you, which means like you can hurt me so bad and I'm telling you that and I'm giving you the ability to do that. It was very like, yeah, to come to terms with that, to come to terms with being able to express like a lot of feelings, but even like, yeah, like open affection and to talk about like my feelings. Even just now when I was like saying all that nice stuff, there was part of me that was like, you are on a podcast talking about your feelings, girl. What are you doing?
Yeah, that's the hard part for some people is to remember whenever I'm engaging in conversation with them, we'll be having this conversation and people will be open and they'll be talking about everything. And then suddenly it's like that light hits them like, shit, this is going to be heard in 36 countries.
Yeah.
So, shit.
Shit, now everyone knows that I love my husband and I have a heart.
Tucker. It's gonna be scandalous. Oh, you're gonna get canceled so bad
Ah,
for
I
this.
know, I know.
So, all right. So, how long did you guys date before you guys got engaged?
We dated for a year before we got engaged. It was
Okay.
not too long after our first dating anniversary that we got engaged.
Okay. So, I remember right. I'm gonna have to go back, but I'm pretty sure he told the story of the engagement. Now, he told his side of it. That day that he proposed, what was that day like for you?
Um, it was a pretty normal day because I really wasn't expecting it by this point because I had thought he was going to propose like twice before this and he didn't. And so then I was like, all right, whatever. This is like, it's not happening anytime soon. Like I'm gonna stop trying to feel it out. Like it's, because I had thought on our like we went out for our dating anniversary and we went back to the park where we had our first kiss and stuff and we were all dressed up and so I was like sure that night it was gonna happen and it didn't. Um and then there was another night we went on vacation to his family's lake house at Lake of the Ozarks and we were sitting out on the dock and he was showing me the stars, because you can't see them at home, here in Detroit like you can at the lake, and so he's showing me all of that. We're sitting there, it's just the two of us, and I was like, okay, this is gonna be, and then it didn't happen. And I was like, okay, well, I don't know. I guess I've been reading the vibes wrong. The proposal's not coming anytime soon, like whatever. So then this day that it happened, I think we, woke up and we went out boating for a while with his family, like hanging out, went to lunch, came back, took a nap. While his parents went grocery shopping and they came back with the groceries. We got up from our nap and I was inside making coffee, just like thinking it's a regular day. He went outside to help bring the groceries in and they're like, hey, Hannah, come outside for a minute. And I was like, okay, it's kind of weird that they need like this many hands to bring, we don't have that many groceries. But I was like, sure, I'll go help, whatever. And go out there. And that's when I sort of start to notice that like Paul is up on the deck standing there, and then Jill is sort of down like at a different vantage point and nowhere near the car, and he's like beginning to lead me down by this waterfall that they have on the property. And so that was when like I sort of started like the nerves really kicked in where I was like, this is I'm being set up for something and there's sort of only one thing that I think might be happening here. And even so, like he when he dropped to one knee and he started giving a really nice speech about how special this place was to him and he wanted to give me a reason for it to be special to me too. And I just remember I was like, what are you doing? What are you doing? I was so shocked and was just like, what this I wasn't expecting this to happen today. That I also forgot to say yes. I like put my hand out and he was like, is that so yes? And I was like, oh yes, I will marry you. Yes, absolutely. I forgot I have to verbally confirm that. Yes, I will.
Yes, I mean, because if you don't, you can do what I did whenever I asked my fiance. Uh, I asked her to marry me, and her response wasn't yes. Now she will claim that she said it, but I never once heard those words come out of her mouth. But her words were, and I quote here, shut up, are you for real?" And so I'm taking that as a yes. So like you have to verbally say it, otherwise we're just running with it.
Yeah, exactly. That's what I was like, he's like, what are you doing? Isn't an answer to the question with you there.
I mean, it's an answer, but it's not the answer he was looking for, Hannah.
Yeah. He's like, I just want to be extra sure.
I'm gonna need you to sign this piece of paper that says yes.
And I did eventually sign the piece of paper that said yes.
You did, you did. So, uh, you guys were engaged for how long before the wedding?
Um, year and a half, I think, or so.
Okay. All right. So, if something happened in between then and the wedding, we'll get back to that. So, but I always enjoy the good stressed out bride stories. So, were you a bridezilla? Be honest.
Um, I was not a bridezilla. I definitely the like week or so before the wedding had like quite a few stress like freakouts to Eric or like to my maid of honor that like looking back I'm like girl that was so fucking silly to be worried about like the what ribbon color for this that or the other like the things that when you are in the minutia of like planning the wedding feel like they matter and then I got to the day of the wedding and I was like oh none of this shit mattered like why did I even so there's like a few looking back that I was like you were way worked up over like nonsense and foolishness but I never was like I didn't scream at any vendors or do any nonsense like that and I was pretty chill like the bridesmaids I was like hey here's the color that we're doing I had them get like a versatile dress that they could all style whatever way they wanted. I was like I don't care what style, I don't have any specifications for how you should look, be comfortable, like tried to be pretty chill. But yeah, I had those few like freakouts over which chairs we could get and stuff like that I'm like why did you feel like that was important? Like it wasn't.
And how do you think Eric handled these freakouts?
He handled them so admirably, so well. He did not ever make me feel like I was being crazy, even though I probably was. I definitely was a few times, probably every time I was being crazy, and he did not make me feel like I was being crazy. He was always very like level-headed and supportive and would listen and then be like, what, after I was done, just like feeling my feelings and vomiting those. If there was an actionable step that needed taking, he was like, I'm gonna take care of the thing that I can do to fix this. And then, is that like, but he was good at striking the balance of not immediately jumping into like, I'll just fix it. He would be like, I know sometimes really it's just that you sort of are feeling a lot of stress and you need to like word vomit at me about how stressed out you are about planning a wedding. So he was a champ. He was a champ. He did all he could.
He gets the gold star.
He really does. He really does.
Okay.
Put up with a lot of
So,
things.
so we did previously say that you do have two very lovely, lovely, cute as hell children.
Thank you.
But you also mentioned that you guys struggled to conceive right away. So there's a lot of couples out there that do have that same issue. And if you don't mind, I would very much like to hear how that story was for you guys.
Yeah, for sure. So we I do want to preface it by saying we definitely don't have as lengthy or intensive or traumatic an experience as I know a lot of people that struggle with infertility do. I do count us like relatively lucky, but it was think it was like 18 months. So it was not right away after the wedding. We gave ourselves a little bit of time, after before we started really sort of in earnest pulling the goalie, and then we were like, we'll do that first, and then we'll just like kind of see what happens. And then, a few months had gone by and it hadn't happened sort of spontaneously. And then we were like, okay, well, we'll start actively like trying. And then it was another like year and a half where of actively trying, and it was not happening, and we couldn't really figure it out, and we'd sort of put off going and like investigating, largely because we were like, we sort of don't want to hear, if there's something really intense or serious. But it was getting to the point where we're like, okay, well, we need to either like start exploring other avenues, or we need to go get answers. That's sort of the first step, if we want to have a biological child, if we want to be able to conceive. And so after, it was like 18 months that we finally, I made an appointment with one of my friend's moms is a doctor. And so she was like, just go meet with my mom. She's been really good about like sort of helping to facilitate, where you can go to get the different answers that you need, and she'll have a better idea of what's going on. And so we met with her, and we'd sort of scheduled all of those tests. And this is like right around, this is July of 2018. And this is at the point where we're like, okay, we're getting all of this testing done. We're going to get this figured out. Because also prior to this, we had one really early, but one miscarriage as well, where like sort of the thing where I found out by like having the miscarriage. So it was like so early, I hadn't even tested or anything. I hadn't realized, just sort of about the time I was gonna start, was when it was over. But so we were going to go and get testing done and figure out, what was going on. And we'd sort of made peace with like, well, it may not be, in the cards for us, or it might be more of a struggle, and had started getting kind of resigned to it, and in the habit of trying to think about the things that we could look forward to that maybe we wouldn't be able to do if we were pregnant or gonna have a baby, and like starting to like, plan as if we weren't going to, just as sort of mental health savior, to have things to look forward to, so it wasn't just constantly, because it was draining after a while, like every month of being like, maybe this is the month, and then it doesn't happen, and then you get amped up again for next month and it doesn't happen. And so we were like, okay, we can't think like that and like live like that anymore. We have to stop getting amped up for like, this might be the month that happens, and just start being like, it's probably not happening. So what else do we have to look forward to? What are things that we can do that we can look forward to? Even as simple as like, oh, next month this beer is coming out, and if I was pregnant, I can't, I would miss out on that this year. Like just something to have, or like, I'm gonna finally learn to ride a motorcycle if I'm not pregnant in 2 months, because like we just it was just so exhausting, the constant like waiting and hoping and thinking, and with my cycles being a little bit irregular, like we had a lot of months too where we were like, oh, it's a little bit late, and like the tests are saying negative, but maybe they're just a little bit off, and like, no, it's just, it's just another no, and we couldn't figure out why. And so right as we were kind of waiting for all of that to shake out, we went on vacation for a wedding and got pregnant on that vacation. And then, so it was like, sort of the thing that I think they talk about a lot of, like when you relax or stop thinking about it, that old, like kind of annoying adage, but like, I don't know, maybe there's something to it of the like, if you stop trying, it'll happen, which is, I heard so much and was always like, okay, how do you stop trying though? Like, how do I make myself even subconsciously, not be trying. But yeah, finally when we just sort of had like 1 month where we were like just gonna go on vacation, we're just gonna kind of chill out about it and relax and enjoy up here, and have a bunch of sex this weekend. Lo and behold,
Well, I mean,
you
that's
know?
generally how that works.
Well,
Is, you know,
from what I've heard.
it, vacation sex and honeymoon sex are from. I think I read a study that said that those are like the top two times when people get pregnant.
Yeah,
So
I mean, sure. Yeah, you're all relaxed, man. You're feeling good. You're just like whatever.
it's usually the alcohol.
Yeah, also that, but usually there's been some tequila consumed, probably like that.
Oh, tequila.
One of my friends swears that it was the malt liquor that got her pregnant. She was like, I drank malt liquor one night with my husband, and then bam, baby. It's like, baby, try that.
Well, I'm pretty sure that's science, you
Yeah,
know.
yeah. I mean,
So, all right, so you get the news. I mean, obviously, you're thrilled, but at what point do you guys also think, oh shit, I'm gonna be parents?
yeah, it's um I feel like it took a few months for me, or maybe it like kind of came in waves because it was like I feel like I remember like a little bit of the oh shit feeling sort of after all of right the disbelief of like when I went to test and I was like I'm just gonna test because then I will like can say I did it and check it off my box and it's gonna say no, and then I looked down and I was like wait, what does it say? So after like that just complete disbelief and like the excitement and everything, there was like a long time where I was just sort of, which I think a lot of people can relate to, right? Waiting again for the other shoe to drop and being like, should I get, should I even attach to that, to the feeling and like really expect to get to that point?
Yeah,
And
because you did say that, I mean, you had that miscarriage before, so was that a worry?
yeah, most definitely. It was most definitely a huge worry. And like, every time I would, go to the bathroom, I would be like so afraid I was going to see blood. Like I would just like constantly every little slight change I felt in my body, I was like looking it up and texting my aunt who's a nurse and being like, is everything okay? Like, is this, as I was super paranoid for a while. But it was like quite a few months in, I think, when the belly really started getting bigger, that then we were like, I remember starting to be like, oh my God, we are going to be someone's parents. I like don't know what I'm doing. I don't know how I'm going to do this. Our lives are going to change so drastically and we have a really good thing with just the two of us. And so there was a lot of like panic and grief sort of mixed together. And even, well after she was born into that, like the newborn stage was rough. That first one especially was rough. She was also a little bit of a crying, colicky, temperamental, angry newborn who screamed a lot constantly.
Did you, how bad was your postpartum?
It was bad. It was very bad. With her especially, it really kicked my ass. And I sort of knew that it was probably going to. My doctor was kind of aware of it as well because I was uh somewhere, back in so it was probably my senior year of high school into college, was diagnosed with clinical depression. So like my doctor kind of knew, she was like, hey, you already have mental health problems. So probably postpartum depression is gonna be a thing for you. Here's what to look out for. Like, I'm gonna be ready. She's like, all you have to do is give a call. We're gonna get you back on medication. Like, we have like a plan in place. But it was so bad. The first week, especially after I gave birth to Daph, uh, man, like that hormone drop off and just the postpartum and the the anxiety around having a kid and like the anxiety I felt that I didn't feel like, the sort of fabled rush of love that you're supposed to quote unquote feel when you give birth, like that didn't happen. I was like, I didn't really feel any sort of special way toward her at first. I was like, I want to take care of her. Like I felt anxiety at the idea of anything happening to her and like was very focused and attentive and wanted her safe for, but didn't really feel like the warm fuzzies. And then I felt bad about that. Like I was a terrible mom. And so like that whole first week was really rough. And I was grateful that I had like some other friends who had already given birth who were checking in and were like, hey, it's normal. And my own mom like sat down with me and was like, girl, I'm gonna be so real with you. I did not feel a rush of love when you were born for you. She's like, I love the shit out of you now. She's like, it'll come eventually. She's like, but it's okay if that didn't happen for you. Like it doesn't happen for everybody. It's, like there's people are different. You've got a lot of hormonal stuff going on. And she's like, and also this baby is a stranger. You haven't met her. You don't know her yet. It's okay if you don't feel that warm rush of love right away. Like you will love your kid. You do love your kid. We see how you're taking care of her. Like you're still doing a good job. Which was like crucial because yeah, I was in the shit with postpartum depression and anxiety for quite a while.
When do you think, at least for Dad, uh, it started to kind of just fade away and just be like, okay, I made this thing. This is mine. I have to love, protect, give it everything that I've got, because this is real.
Mhm.
When it all that stuff comes into play.
Yeah, I mean, like I said from the very beginning, I sort of felt the like I have to protect and keep her safe and like it was really anxious about that, but like I felt sort of the first rush of love, I don't know, probably when she was maybe like 3 weeks old. Like like the true first sort of I was looking at her and was like, oh, it's like my baby. Like this is, and that's and then like it kept pouring on after that. But the postpartum, depression and anxiety, really I didn't end up kicking until she was like 2.5 and I went to the doctor and finally got back on medication because they put me on medication for a little bit right after she was born. And I did sort of that thing you're not supposed to do where I was like, well, I feel better, so I'm gonna stop taking it. And then a combination of like when I started feeling shitty, a lot of the mental illness was just sort of telling me it was, me and my life that was the reason I was feeling shitty, and definitely not that you still need to be on meds, bitch. And that's what it was. And then like we got, into the pandemic and you couldn't get into the doctor and stuff. And so it ended up being, she was like 2.5 and I had been just so miserable, so depressed, so angry, so like unhappy and like hated every part of motherhood. Like I would still do all the stuff, right? And sing and play and laugh and love on her and like do everything for her and not take it out on her because I was petrified and horrified at the idea of her ever thinking that it was anything to do with her because I just felt like it's just that you're a bad person and a shitty mom and that's why you feel these feelings so you have to keep them bottled up and not let them get out and be reflected in your parenting to her because you shouldn't put that on her just because you are a failure of a person. And like eventually all of that built up so bad that I was like just in a true like mental sort of spiral. And like Eric and my best friend were like, I think you're having an extended like anxiety attack and I think that you need to get back into your doctor and like, you know, get this solved. And so I like made the appointment and went in, and my doctor was like, "Hey, so postpartum depression can actually last for years and years after you give birth. A lot of people think if it's like, more than 6 months or more than a year after you've given birth, like it can't be that." And he's like, "It definitely can be that. It definitely sounds like that's what it is." And he's like, so, and he was great about getting me set up back on medication and in therapy, and also at like reaffirming when I started to be like, well, I can't believe that's what it is. And I should have just come and gotten to the doctor sooner, and I didn't have to be. And he was like, don't do that to yourself. Don't beat yourself up for the fact that you feel like you should have known sooner what was going on with yourself or gotten yourself help sooner. He's like, you're here now getting help. That's good. That's what we're focusing on, is that now you're here and doing what you need to do to get help. Um, but yeah, so thank God for that, because I had no idea. I was just like, oh, I guess I'm miserable just because like I am a bad person and a bad mom, and I shouldn't have had a kid, and like I suck, and that's why I feel this way. And it's like, no, it's that you had some bad stuff going on with your brain, girl. You just needed a little store-bought serotonin.
So, how was it after the boy was born?
It was significantly better. I did stay on my medication. I worked out a plan with my doctor, so I stayed medicated through my pregnancy with him, which made a huge difference because I could feel like some of the similar the drop off and things like that, some similar stuff wanting to come up after I gave birth to him, but it was significantly easier to like work through the emotions in sort of a quick, normal, healthy way, and not feel consumed and like unable to function by, sadness or anxiety. It was like sort of more in line with what you would hope kind of a regular experience of having a newborn is, of like, is he still all the new parent anxiety of like, is he pooped enough? Is he drinking enough water? Is he, when's the last time he ate? Like all of that stuff, but not just all consuming, like, you feel like you're dying when you're just sitting on the couch and everything's normal. Um, so it was significantly better with him, because I was aware that it was like, okay, postpartum is going to be coming for my ass again, so let me not even play games this time.
So while you were going through postpartum and you were dealing with all that stuff with the baby, what was your marriage like? Was that like rock solid, or was there some issues?
Yeah, I mean, it was definitely rocky, just because I was so unhappy and so angry and closed off. Like I definitely was not a kind partner to him, I feel, during that time. Like picking, needless fights, and just sort of nothing was ever right, because I was just like, nothing was right with me in my brain. Nothing could be right. There was nothing anything anybody could have done. Um, but so that was definitely a very rocky period where like I just like felt crappy. I didn't know what was going on. I didn't know how to talk about it. I certainly didn't want to talk about anything, because I felt like it was either me, or like at times that I was like, maybe it's, maybe it's him, maybe it's us, maybe it's the baby, like all of those things that just play in your head of like, so I was just like, let me just not deal with any of it, because I don't know what's going on. I'm just angry and sad and everything sucks. And so like we did our best, and we definitely, like, he was super wonderful about constantly trying to like facilitate that communication, and at being there without judgment, even when I had been like kind of not great to him, or had like really distant depression months where I just wasn't talking that much to anybody and things like that, of still uh like meeting me with open arms when I needed to then suddenly, without explanation, like lean back into him for support, and like which I give him a ton of credit for, because I that cannot have been easy to like, go through, sort of, and not even really knowing what's going on exactly with your partner or your relationship, and like sort of that uh all of that. And this is all coinciding with like the lockdown, and so we were
Hmm.
in the crib together like all the time, which I definitely think probably made my postpartum depression worse, right? Because a lot of it was telling me you want to get away from your baby. It's like it's the problem is the baby and I need to be away from the baby. And then I was in a situation where I was like, girl, you cannot get away from the baby. You can't go to work, you can't go anywhere. There's, um so it was a very like sort of such a strange time because like I have so many fond memories of the lockdown and of that time of like the three of us and getting sort of that quality time together that you don't really get otherwise, right? Everyone's so busy and we're back at it, but like also it's always colored with just me feeling like I was like not treating him super well because I was not myself because I was so like just miserable and needed help and medication and support and I didn't know that I needed that and so I wasn't asking for it and was pushing anyone who might have offered it away. So it's like tough, to think back on that time.
Yeah, definitely. I mean, kudos for Eric. I've always known him to be a very stand-up guy, but it's in those moments that you just realize just how great of a partner that you have is whenever you're giving you, let's say, 10% because you got so much going on, you can only give
Hmm.
10, and he's over there or she's over there giving 90. That's
Hmm.
that's a that's a
Yeah.
true relationship. So
Yeah, for sure.
so all right, so you've got two wonderful kids. Well, three if you count Eric. Sorry, I've got so many stories. So, um, you got three kids again, but counting your husband in here. Um, and the world is kind of back open. You've got like everything is open to do all these things. Where's Hannah's life now?
Yeah, so now, well, I work part-time at a local bookstore in the town that we live in, and so I'm really enjoying that. And then the rest of the time, I'm either at home, taking care of the kids, although they just started school and daycare, like I said. So, now I have more time to fill in with my other part-time job, which is I teach theater to people with disabilities. But so that's what a lot of my life is just sort of teaching, trying to, make theater when I can. I act and direct still as often as I can. Um, and working at the bookstore, talking about literature, helping people find their next great read, and chasing my two wild kids around and making out with my hot husband.
So, well, I guess So speaking of, like, because I love to read as well. What what is your go-to book? Like, what is your comfort book?
Ooh, my comfort book would definitely have to be The Secret Life of Bees by Sue Monk Kidd. It's one of my favorite books of all time. And it's like sort of it's maybe a weird comfort read because a lot of the themes are very sort of intense, right? It deals with like racism and death and like, segregation in the 60s, like really sort of heavy stuff, but it's one that I read sort of when I was at that point as a teenager where I was going through stuff with like my mom, and that's a major theme for that main character. And it's just such the way that Sue Monk Kidd writes is so lush but succinct, and like it doesn't get overly descriptive and flowery, but it still paints such a beautiful picture that every time I'm like I get lost right into it. And I love the story of, finding your own family and learning to build a life around the hole that's left behind by loss, and like, that those things can coincide. It's just always like, uh, it's such a comfort book for me. So I always go back to that one if I'm like, I just need to read something I know I love.
I get that. So speaking of that, what book, play, movie, uh, do you think legitimately, I do truly believe that these things can uh, change your outlook on life or just change your life in general?
Oh my gosh. See, this is one of those things where then like I get asked this question and I'm like, girl, you've never read a book or watched a movie in your life. You don't know. Like I forgot everything I've ever watched. Um, Something that I think would change your outlook on life. I mean, I have to say the book I just talked about, I think, is definitely one that I would say changed a lot for me. My outlook and my relationship with my mother, and with you know carrying grief and all of that. Gosh, I wish I had like a more interesting answer for this one.
No. It's fine because you know, like, I can. I mean, mine. I look back and I think of Mitch Albom's Tuesdays with Morrie.
Mm,
I first read that book, and I think I read that thing like three three times straight. You know, like I get
mhm,
done, we're back to page one because it was just so good, and you know, and it taught me a lot about you know like acceptance of dying and things that aren't in your
mm,
control. And then you know, like as far as like movies and stuff like that goes, I always go to my favorite movie of all time is Dead Poets Society.
mm,
And I think whatever it was about that movie, it just struck me. And I don't know, maybe it's because like I've got like uh like that I'm a poet and you know like, I got
mm,
like a poet's soul and stuff like that. But it's just kind of just the whole theme, you know, like carpe diem, you know, it's seizing the moment and you know like loving life and while we have it, that kind of stuff. So
mhm.
like those are the things for me, like those things, that movie, that book, just like I honestly believe changed my entire outlook on everything whenever
Yeah,
I first watched and read them.
yeah.
So, all right. So I do have a couple more questions for you. Um, one being, what does Hannah appreciate the most about life right now?
What do I appreciate the most about life right now? Just really at this season of life, like super appreciative of the time that I have with my family. Like I sort of, for the longest time, was always wanting to and felt a need to really jam pack my schedule full of things and was living sort of the independent contractor gig worker life and especially as an actor, right? I'm constantly on the move. Everything has to be jam packed as much as possible to whittle together some semblance of money or a career or an ascribed meaning to myself. And like uh I feel like a lot of people went through that, with the sort of pandemic and the lockdown, and with that slowdown, kind of realizing what really mattered. But I find myself very appreciative of having less to do, less ambition, I guess, these days, and more just appreciation and desire to have nothing to do but watch my kids play, but sit and drink coffee with my husband and talk to him, like, things like that, of just the sweet, mundane, everyday stuff. I'm really appreciative of right now, more so than anything, having that time uh to enjoy that instead of feeling like I need to jam pack my day with working or finding things to do, you know?
So, I everyone on the show knows that I'm a huge nerd. So like I am big into Doctor Who, David Tennant, and all that because you mentioned Macbeth, and I know that he's done quite a few renditions of it. in the past. So you get a time machine. You're only able to go back in time to talk to yourself. You know, you can't really change anything. But what do you tell young Hannah?
Um, I would tell her that you're doing better than you think you are, and that all of the big hurt that you feel and the big feelings that you feel and the way that you feel like you don't know what the fuck you're doing or what you're gonna do and that you're somehow failing at everything. Uh, it's all not true. Like you're doing better than you think you are, and all of that is building a foundation, even when it just feels like it's sort of bogging you down in the mud and is an indication that you aren't good enough. It's an indication that you are, that you're carrying all of this, that it hasn't broken you, it hasn't stopped you. And all of that is continued proof that you can do it again and again, and you will, and it won't always feel as heavy as it feels when you're this little. Someday I'll be here to help carry it.
It's very poetic. So, Hannah, I want to thank you for very much for coming on the show. But before we go, I want to. I always like a lot of us guys. We always kind of rib each other whenever one of us gets married. It's always like, especially once we get to know the significant other. It's always like, good for him because you are an amazing woman. You're very, you're very beautiful. You're smart. You're funny. You're energetic. You could do better. But
I
but no,
disagree, sir.
in all seriousness, no. I mean, I absolutely. Um, I'm very glad that we got the chance to meet prior to this interview because it made it a little easier, especially whenever you're interviewing one of your best friends, your adopted brother's wife. So like
Yeah.
you don't want to have that super awkward first chat being like super in depth. And oh, by the way, I'm broadcasting it over the internet. But no, in all seriousness, though, I just listening to everything, you are you're a very strong person to be able to go through all that and keep a smile on your face, to not only just try to keep a positive outlook, but just the will just to keep going and adapting to your surroundings. There's not a better or a stronger person in the world than people that can do that. I honestly think that when when my when my brother Eric said that he was getting married, I didn't realize that he was going to be marrying one woman. So, so but he is everything that he has ever told me about you, and more. I think
Oh, thank
I think he tried. I think he really tried to keep all your strengths and all your awesomeness a secret and to himself. So clearly, w- uh, we disappointed him on that. So the entire world's going to know how awesome his wife is.
Oh, thank you so much. It's been so fun
Y-
chatting with you.
Well, it's been my pleasure, and thanks again for coming on. And ladies and gentlemen, thanks again. This has been another edition of In Your Head with Shane Stanford. Uh, come back the next time I post an episode. Geez, I don't know when these things are coming out.
What's up, guys? In Your Head with Shannon Stanford is a podcast where Shannon talks to everyday people with everyday problems. Everyone has a story, and every story should be told. So you listen right now to Shannon's podcast on Spotify and many other places, y'all. Come on, man. Be the light. Peace.